The digital clock on the dashboard flickered 8:37 p.m. as Amelia Hart turned into her driveway. The house stood in silence under the faint glow of the porch light, a still silhouette in the cold suburban street. Her fingers were stiff from the steering wheel, her back ached from the long day, and her stomach rumbled from skipping lunch again. With a sigh, she grabbed her laptop bag and a crumpled grocery sack from the passenger seat, heels clicking across the driveway. As she unlocked the front door, guilt settled like a stone in her chest. She was late. Again. The living room greeted her with a soft hum of the floor lamp. A bowl of cereal sat half-eaten on the coffee table. Her son, Luke, was curled up on the couch, head resting on a pillow, glasses slightly crooked, math book still open in front of him. He hadn't made it to bed. Amelia set everything down and knelt beside him, brushing a lock of hair from his forehead. "I'm so sorry, baby," she whispered. "I didn't mean to be this late." Luke stirred. His dark eyes fluttered open and immediately softened when he saw her. "Hey, Mom," he said, sleepily rubbing his eyes. "It's okay. I waited." Her throat tightened. "I should have been here for dinner. We were supposed to make spaghetti." "It's okay," he repeated, a little stronger this time. "I made cereal." She forced a smile. "You're too grown up for 10. You know that?" Luke grinned. "I know." She lifted him gently. "Come on, let's get you to bed." By the time Amelia had tucked Luke in, washed the dishes, and responded to 3 emails from her boss, it was past 10:30. She slumped into the worn kitchen chair, letting her head rest on the table. The silence of the house was loud. Too loud. She remembered what Mrs. Caldwell had said earlier at pickup. "You know, Amelia, it's just a shame. Some moms make time. That's all I'm saying." Amelia had smiled through clenched teeth, ignoring the judgment. What would they know? Those perfect PTA moms with their homemade cupcakes, coordinated outfits, and endless afternoons at soccer games. They had husbands with steady jobs and time to spare. She had rent to pay, groceries to stretch, a marketing firm that barely tolerated sick days. She didn't choose to be late. She didn't want to miss anything. But life didn't come with perfect scheduling. Still, their whispers stung. Poor Luke, his mom's never around. "He came to the science fair alone last year, remember? Why have kids if you're going to let someone else raise them?" She heard it all, even if they never said it to her face. Amelia took a deep breath and opened her laptop again. If she could finish the proposal tonight, maybe, just maybe, she could leave early tomorrow. Luke had art night. He'd been reminding her every day for a week. She wouldn't miss that. Not this time. The next morning started with toast burning in the toaster, Luke's shoelace snapping mid-knot, and Amelia spilling coffee on her white blouse. They both laughed at the chaos, a private kind of ritual that had become strangely comforting. "Mom?" Luke said as she drove him to school. "I don't care what other people say. I know you try really hard." The words stopped her breath. "Did someone say something to you?" she asked, glancing in the rearview mirror. Luke shrugged. "Some kids say you work too much, that it's weird you're not at school stuff." Her grip on the steering wheel tightened. "I told them you work so we have a house, and pancakes, and Nerf guns." A laugh escaped her lips. "Well, those are pretty important." Luke smiled. "They just don't know, but I do." She pulled into the school lot and stopped. Before he could unbuckle, she reached back and held his hand. "You are the best thing I've ever done, Luke. I hope you always know that." "I do, Mom," he said. "Go be awesome today, okay?" Amelia sat in the car for a few minutes after he disappeared into the building. She stared out at the other parents, watching them gather in chatty little clusters. None of them looked her way. She was invisible, but Luke had seen her, and somehow That made it bearable. The gymnasium buzzed with laughter and chatter as parents filed into the fold-out chairs, clutching lukewarm coffee and oversized tote bags. The school's art celebration night banner hung across the stage, decorated with colorful crayon splashes and glittered letters. Amelia weaved through the crowd, awkwardly clutching her purse and a bundled coat. She checked her phone again. 6:47 p.m. She'd made it. Barely. Her heels clicked against the polished floor as she scanned for Luke. Her eyes landed on him near the display board marked Room 4B. His art, bold, streaked with primary colors and cut-out shapes, was pinned front and center. He stood beside it with his teacher, Mrs. Hanley, who gave her a warm wave when she approached. "Sorry I'm late," Amelia said, brushing hair from her face and kneeling beside Luke. "Traffic was a nightmare, and my boss—" She stopped. She didn't want to make excuses. Luke smiled, and without a word, handed her a tiny plastic cup filled with red punch. "You made it," he said simply. Something in her cracked a little. He wasn't mad, not even disappointed, just happy she was there now. "I love it," she whispered, staring at the piece titled, "My Favorite Place, the Kitchen When Mom Cooks." Amelia swallowed. She couldn't remember the last time they'd had a real home-cooked meal together. But Luke remembered the moments. The smell of rosemary, the way she danced with the spatula, the small things. And then, like a sudden chill through a sunny afternoon, she heard it. She finally showed up. Probably on her way to another meeting after this. "I don't know how that kid does so well without anyone raising him." The voices weren't loud, but they were sharp, cutting. Amelia turned slightly, pretending to admire the finger paintings nearby. But she saw them, a group of mothers by the refreshments table. Mrs. Caldwell among them, with her always perfect bun and designer crossbody. The others chuckled in hushed tones. One of them glanced right at Amelia, then looked away quickly. The laughter stung. She tried to shake it off. She had learned to ignore whispers, pretend she didn't care. But tonight, it felt personal. Luke tugged on her sleeve. "Mrs. Hanley said I get a ribbon," Amelia beamed. "That's amazing, Luke." They walked together to the small award corner. Amelia held her head a little higher, but the words from the other parents clung to her like static. Later that night, after Luke was tucked into bed, with his ribbon proudly pinned to his headboard, Amelia stood in the kitchen, staring blankly at the dishes. She hadn't eaten dinner. She didn't have the appetite. Instead, she poured herself a glass of water and sat at the counter, phone in hand. She opened her calendar. There it was. Every colored block, every hour spoken for, every meeting, school deadline, dentist appointment, client pitch. The words from the art night echoed again. That kid does so well without anyone raising him. They had no idea. They didn't see her up at 5 a.m. packing lunches with little notes, or working from the sideline of a soccer practice just so she could be near him, or taking client calls with one hand while holding Luke's hand at the pharmacy. They didn't see the sacrifices, just the absences. The next day, Amelia forced herself to go to the school's morning coffee mingle, hosted in the front garden. She hated it, small talk and sugar-coated judgments. But Luke's class needed parent volunteers for their upcoming field trip, and she wanted to at least show up to sign the form. She poured herself a coffee from the thermos table and stood off to the side, watching the familiar social circles gather like clockwork. Mrs. Caldwell approached. Her lips pulled into a tight smile. "Hi, Amelia. Long day at the office already?" Amelia took a sip and returned the smile, cool and polite. "Just starting, actually." Mrs. Caldwell tilted her head. "You know, some of us were saying last night, it's impressive how Luke does so well, considering—" "Considering? Well?" She gave a faux innocent shrug. "He's alone a lot. That's hard for a child. But he seems resilient. Amelia's smile didn't waver. That's because I raised him to be. There was a pause. Well, I suppose it builds character, Mrs. Caldwell muttered, before walking off. Amelia clenched her jaw, biting back the words she wanted to shout. She didn't need validation from those women, but it hurt all the same. That evening, as she helped Luke with his spelling homework, she noticed him chewing on the end of his pencil. Everything okay, buddy? He nodded, but didn't meet her eyes. Some kids said stuff about you, that you don't care about school stuff, that I make things up. A deep ache bloomed in her chest. What did you say? Luke shrugged. I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to sound mad. She reached across the table and held his hand. You never have to explain me, Luke, but just know, everything I do, all of it, is for you. He looked up then. I know, that's why I'm gonna tell them someday, like, in a big way. She smiled. Like what? A poster? A speech? He grinned mischievously. Something cooler. 3 weeks later, Amelia's life resembled a delicate Jenga tower, each block of responsibility stacked high, always one nudge away from collapse. Work had picked up sharply. Her firm was preparing for a major product launch, and she'd been tapped to lead the proposal for a prospective investor. It was a huge opportunity, possibly a promotion, but it came with after-hours calls, last-minute meetings, and constant mental juggling. Meanwhile, Luke's school sent home notice after notice. Field trip form, pajama day reminder, permission slip for recorder lessons, parent-teacher conferences. Amelia kept up, barely, until she didn't. It was a Tuesday when the meltdown began. Amelia had worked late again the night before, prepping slides for her pitch. She woke to the sunlight streaming through her bedroom window, and a sinking realization. Her alarm never went off. Luke! She shouted, bolting out of bed. We're late! Luke, already dressed and sitting quietly at the kitchen table, looked up. I made cereal. Amelia paused, heartbreaking. You did? He nodded. Didn't want to bother you. She exhaled, brushing his hair back. Thank you, sweetheart. By the time she dropped him off, 15 minutes past the bell, she was frazzled and running late for her 9 a.m. call. Then came the email. Subject: Luke's behavior in class from Mrs. Hanley to Amelia Green. Hi, Amelia. I wanted to bring something to your attention. Luke has seemed more distracted in class lately, and today he got into a small argument with another student. Nothing serious, but it's unusual for him. I understand you've been busy, but perhaps we could find time to talk. Best, Mrs. Hanley Amelia stared at the screen. The room spun slightly. She reread the lines over and over. I understand you've been busy. There it was again, that silent judgment. That night, Amelia burned dinner. Luke said it was okay, and they ordered pizza, but she knew she was unraveling. By Thursday, she reached her breaking point. It was the day of the all-school assembly, which she didn't know about until Luke casually mentioned it over breakfast. They asked for volunteers to speak about what makes you proud of your family. I said no, he said, crunching his toast. Amelia frowned. Why? He shrugged. Didn't want people to laugh. She paused mid-sip. Laugh about what? You! That you're never around. They don't get it, Mom. His voice cracked slightly. And I don't want to cry in front of everyone. That did it. Amelia felt like her chest had caved in. She dropped him off at school in silence, then parked her car around the block, gripped the wheel, and sobbed. Not the quiet tears she'd learned to shed in the shower. These were guttural, gasping cries, the kind that racked your body with guilt. She felt like she was failing on all fronts. Not enough at work, not enough at home. And worst of all, her son was starting to believe the whispers. When she got home that night, she didn't touch her laptop. She sat with Luke on the couch and asked him, What would you say if you did speak at the assembly? He looked surprised. I don't know. Try. Pretend it's just me and you. Luke looked at the ceiling for a second, then said slowly, I'd say my mom works hard. Not because she doesn't want to be here, but because she wants me to have everything. And she still packs my lunches with notes sometimes, and smells like vanilla shampoo when she kisses me goodbye. Amelia blinked back tears. That's what I'd say, he added softly. But it's dumb. She shook her head. No, it's beautiful, and it's not dumb. He looked at her, uncertain. Then why does everyone think you're a bad mom? She leaned in. Because they don't know the whole story. But I think maybe it's time they heard it. The following morning, Luke did something unexpected. When the school counselor asked again if anyone wanted to speak at Friday's assembly, he raised his hand. Mrs. Hanley emailed Amelia that afternoon. Hi, Amelia. Just a heads up. Luke volunteered to speak tomorrow. He said it was important. You might want to come. Best, Mrs. Hanley. Amelia stared at the message for a full minute, then picked up the phone and called her manager. I won't be on the investor call tomorrow morning, she said. Silence on the other end. That's a big meeting, Amelia. I know, but my son's speaking at school for the first time. I have to be there. Another pause. Then her manager, surprisingly, said, Go. You've earned it. For the first time in weeks, Amelia let herself breathe. The gymnasium was buzzing. Parents lined the folding chairs, fanning themselves with school programs, chatting idly as the students shuffled into neat rows on the floor. Banners hung from the rafters. Family Week celebration in bold block letters, surrounded by finger-painted hearts and stars. Amelia sat near the back, her heart thumping so hard it rattled in her ribs. She hadn't told Luke she was coming. She wanted to surprise him. But now, watching the room fill up, she wondered if he would freeze. Maybe he'd regret volunteering. Maybe he wouldn't even go up at all. She hadn't worn anything special, just her plain navy blazer over a blouse. But she'd dabbed on some mascara and pulled her hair into a neater bun than usual. It wasn't for anyone else's benefit. It was for him. She wanted him to see her and know, I'm here, I'm listening, I'm proud. Mrs. Hanley stepped up to the mic. Good morning, families and friends. Welcome to our annual Family Week Assembly. Today, a few brave students will come up and share what makes their family special. A polite round of applause echoed. As the first student, a grinning third grader with missing teeth, talked about his dog, kind of being like a brother, Amelia scanned the crowd. She spotted the Peters twins' mother, arms folded, whispering to another mom. The same one who once called Amelia out in the school parking lot. She's always last to pick up Luke, she'd said loud enough for others to hear. You'd think she was allergic to parenting. Amelia's cheeks had burned that day. Today, she stared straight ahead. Another kid finished, a shy girl who recited her poem in a whisper. Then, Mrs. Hanley returned to the mic. Next up, we have Luke Green from 5th grade. Amelia sat bolt upright. There was a short pause as Luke rose from the bleachers. He looked small under the stage lights, his skinny arms gripping the paper he clutched like a life preserver. Amelia leaned forward, holding her breath. Luke glanced at the crowd, saw her. Their eyes met. His brows lifted in surprised relief, and he gave a tiny nod, like he could do this now. He stepped up to the microphone, cleared his throat. Hi, I'm Luke. I want to talk about my mom. The room hushed. She's not like the other moms. She doesn't bake cookies for PTA. She's not always at pickup, and sometimes she forgets it's crazy sock day. But, he took a breath. She's the hardest working person I know, and she still finds time to be my mom. Someone near the front murmured softly. Amelia's throat tightened. She works late because she's trying to build a better life for us, but she never forgets to say good night. She doesn't always make it to games, but she texts me jokes at lunch. She's tired, but she listens to me when I talk about dinosaurs, even though I've talked about them a lot." The audience chuckled. Luke's voice was steadier now. "Some kids say I must be lonely because she's not always around, but I'm not, because I know she's doing everything she can for me. And I'm proud of her, like, really proud." There was a pause. Luke looked down at his paper. "I think people should stop judging moms just because they're not doing what everyone expects, especially when they're doing their best." And then, just as quietly, he added, "She smells like vanilla shampoo. And that makes me feel safe." The audience didn't clap right away. It was that kind of moment, where stillness said more than applause could. Then, finally, the room erupted. Not in a roaring cheer, but in warm, knowing applause. A few parents stood. Even Mrs. Hanley dabbed her eye. Luke stepped down, his face red but glowing. Amelia stood, unable to hold back tears, and waved to him from the back. He saw her, grinned, and gave a little wave back. As the assembly wrapped up, several parents approached her. "I had no idea," one mother said softly. "You're doing an amazing job." Another dad added, "My wife works nights too. People don't get how hard it is." Even the Peters twins' mom offered a stiff nod. "That was a powerful speech," she said awkwardly, before walking off. Mrs. Hanley caught her before she left. "He wrote it himself, you know," she whispered. "Didn't even want help editing. Said he wanted it to come from the heart." Amelia swallowed the lump rising in her throat. "Thank you for letting him speak." "Thank you for raising a boy who can speak like that." That night, Amelia made grilled cheese for dinner. Nothing fancy, just golden, buttery comfort food. They sat on the couch, feet tucked under blankets, watching a movie neither of them paid attention to. Halfway through, Luke turned to her. "You liked it?" She smiled. "More than you'll ever know." He nodded, then leaned his head on her shoulder. She kissed the top of his hair. Vanilla and peanut butter. "Did you mean what you said?" she asked. Luke tilted his head. "Which part?" "That you're proud of me." He didn't hesitate. "Always." Her eyes welled again, but this time she let it be, because for once, the world had stopped spinning. And in that tiny moment, cheesy fingers, mismatched socks, late dinner and all, she knew. She wasn't a perfect mom, but she was a good one. And that mattered more than anything. 3 weeks had passed since the assembly, but the ripple effect still lingered. Amelia noticed it in the subtle things. The way other parents smiled at her during pickup instead of avoiding her, or how a few of them even started conversations in the hall. Someone from the PTA left a handwritten note in her mailbox. "Working moms are superheroes too. Thanks for the reminder." Even Luke's teacher pulled her aside after school one day. "I just wanted to say," Mrs. Chen said gently, "you're raising an exceptional young man." Amelia wasn't used to compliments about her parenting. For so long, the world had seemed eager to point out everything she lacked. But now, there was something else, an undercurrent of respect. Not because she'd changed who she was, but because Luke had spoken from his heart, and people listened. Yet in all of it, she still worked late. Deadlines didn't disappear just because her reputation had shifted. The job remained demanding, the hours long. But something had changed. Within her. She no longer carried guilt like a second skin. Instead, she wore resolve. One evening, Amelia returned home after a late client meeting. It was almost 9 p.m. The apartment was quiet, dimly lit, except for the soft glow of Luke's nightlight. She kicked off her heels, dropped her purse, and padded quietly to his room. He was awake, reading under his covers with a flashlight. When he saw her, he beamed. "Hey, Mom." "Hey, baby, you should be asleep." "I know," he grinned, "but I was waiting." She sat beside him, smoothing his hair. "Anything happened today?" "Yeah," he said, sitting up. They want me to speak again. What, another assembly? He nodded. This time for a district event. Voices of Youth. Mrs. Hanley nominated me. They're choosing 5 kids from all over the city. Amelia's jaw dropped. Luke! That's amazing! He looked down, suddenly shy. I think I want to do it, but this time I want to talk about something else. Oh? He nodded slowly. I want to talk about how people see kids like me differently. You know, kids with working parents, single moms, tiny apartments. I want to say that just because we don't have the same stuff doesn't mean we're missing anything important. Amelia stared at him, completely floored. Her son, her baby boy, speaking with more wisdom at 10 than most adults she knew. She pulled him into a hug. You have no idea how proud I am. I learned it from you, he mumbled into her shoulder. You always get back up, even when people are mean. You just keep going. Amelia swallowed thickly. Because I have someone worth going for. The following weekend, the school hosted a community potluck. Amelia rarely had time for events like these, but this time she made it happen. She didn't bring fancy cupcakes or signature chili, just a tray of lemon bars, slightly overcooked on one side, but made with real sugar and care. Luke carried them proudly to the dessert table. Other moms smiled and waved. One even said, My daughter talks about Luke all the time. He's really kind. Another said, I heard about the speech. You're lucky to have each other. Amelia had never felt like she fit in before. She wasn't the yoga pants in the morning line mom. She didn't have the Pinterest-perfect bento lunches or the time to volunteer twice a week. But now, she didn't need to fit in. She'd carved her own space, earned, not granted. Later, as the sun set and kids played tag in the grass outside the school, Amelia sat on a bench, sipping lukewarm lemonade. Luke ran up, breathless and glowing. Mom! What's up? He pulled something from his pocket, a tiny plastic dinosaur figurine. Found it at the prize table. It's a T-Rex. Thought you'd like it. Amelia laughed. For me? Of course, he said. You earned it. You survived 5th grade. She took the tiny T-Rex and cradled it like treasure. And in that silly, sweet moment, with the smell of barbecue in the air, laughter echoing across the field, and her son beaming at her with joy, Amelia realized something. This was her riches, not money, not accolades, not approval from strangers. But this life, this love, this boy who saw her not as someone who missed bedtime stories, but as the hero who made bedtime possible. Luke stood behind another microphone, taller now, more confident. His voice filled the auditorium at the district showcase. I used to think being different meant I had less. Now I know it means I have more empathy, more stories, more strength. Amelia sat in the crowd, hands clasped over her heart, tears pooling again. But this time she didn't wipe them away. She let them fall, every drop a memory, every tear a reminder. They had been judged, whispered about, looked down on, but they had risen, together, and for the first time, she no longer felt like a bad mom. She felt like exactly the mom she was meant to be. If this story resonates with you, hit the like button and leave your story in the comments section. And of course, subscribe to my channel for more real, raw, and ridiculous stories.